Good afternoon. Hope you're having an awesome day. I actually wanted to come on to talk a little bit about codependency, so codependent people, and narcissistic personality disorder as well. I'm going to try and keep it sort of fairly, direct at one certain aspect of it, because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to codependency and narcissistic personality disorder as separate things, and then how they come together as well. But what I really wanted to talk about today was how and why certain people, women especially, that are codependent, how they end up sort of looking past the red flags of a potential relationship, and just end up entering into that relationship, even though at some point most of them would have had a sign, from their intuition, gut feeling, whatever you want to call it, that said, something's not quite right. So with codependent people, normally from their childhood, they wouldn't have had someone that was sort of a consistent role model. So there was not really like a protector there. There was no sort of emotional communication, so their feelings and their presence wasn't really, say, valued. It just wasn't there was no sort of emotional intellect there. The child's feelings just weren't sort of a priority to the caregiver, and so these children end up being really vulnerable adults who then tend to hide or numb the pain or distract from the root cause with things like addictions, so whether that's drugs, alcohol, sex, work, exercise, whatever it is. They tend to try and mask it with some form of addiction initially, but then they also will enter into relationships and even friendships without boundaries. So this is what codependent people really lack, is boundaries, because they weren't taught it. They were never taught any boundaries. They were never taught that their feelings were valid, their opinions weren't validated. It's as if they don't matter, so that doesn't matter. Them as a person doesn't matter, their feelings don't matter. And this is why then codependents that have got that mindset will enter into a relationship that feels like it's going to fulfill any of the needs that were missed during that childhood. So for example, with the codependent, again, there was no protector. There was no one there that was going to protect them, that was going to have their back. There was nobody there that sort of told them how special they were, sort of told them, whether they were beautiful, if they were good at something. Never sort of really gave them a chance or appreciated the efforts. And so, especially when it comes to narcissistic people, codependents get attracted to them in the initial stages because of what narcissists do at the beginning of a relationship. So it's sort of like grooming, really. They portray this really charming, lovely, outgoing, kind, generous person, which is known as the love bombing stage. So what they're doing and what they're aiming to do is fulfill the needs of the codependent, validate their needs, which is what everybody's looking for, is validation and to be seen. So they make the codependent feel seen. They're validating their feelings. They're telling them how beautiful they are. They're buying them gifts, all sorts of nice gestures, which do tend to be quite grand in the scheme of things. They're quite grandiose. gestures. There can be, sometimes they can be subtle. It sort of depends how far down the spectrum of, you know, MPD the individual is. So yeah, they'll love bomb and they start fulfilling all these needs that the codependent's got. So the further into this cycle the codependent gets sucked, the less they pay attention to the red flags, you know, because narcissists have obviously got another side of the personality, where they can be quite rude to other people they don't really care about, or they're not trying to please. Facial expression of a narcissist when they're not keeping up the act also gives off signals of well, complete opposite of safety to an individual, and this can be on a subconscious level to the codependent, but something will be saying to them on an intuitive level something's not quite right. However, they will disregard, a codependent person will disregard those red flags and their intuition and any gut feeling in the hopes that the void and the gaping hole from childhood they're feeling is going to be fulfilled. So you're sort of sabotaging when really you're protecting yourself again, by getting with someone that is going to fulfill these needs, and give you everything you've sort of been longing for. And then that's when, you know, the vicious cycle begins. Is you get sucked in, you get lured in. The love bombing, you know, sometimes it's a short period, sometimes it's long. They're very good at gauging your emotions and whatnot, because they've done it before. They've been doing it their entire life. And then that's when the love bombing starts to switch to things like gaslighting, manipulation, isolation, which is a massive red flag when it comes to abusive, toxic, manipulative, narcissistic relationships. They will isolate you as much as possible because humans can't function on a rational level when they are isolated. But a codependent, again, they're going to keep ignoring those signs each time that narcissist acts kindly to them and fulfills their needs. And this cycle continues until the codependent is so confused, is questioning their worth, is questioning whether the red flags are red flags. They're now questioning whether, well, maybe it's worth it for the good times because I feel seen, I feel valued, which makes it extremely hard for them to leave. And it really is a continuous vicious cycle of getting their needs met, to then sort of being called all sorts, you know. There's the name calling, there's the isolation, there's the manipulation, then the gaslighting, sort of where they're told that it's all them. If they get angry, it's your fault. If something happens, it's your fault. If he goes and cheats, or she, it's your fault. You know, a lot of codependents get told by their abusers that they need to go and see a doctor, that they're not well. And as you can imagine, over time, the longer you stay in a relationship like this, the less you're going to be thinking rationally. Especially if there's abuse in the relationship as well, and there's any sort of, if you're being triggered, and when we say sort of trauma, if any sort of trauma inside you has been triggered, your body also automatically goes into protection mode. So it's trying to keep you, it's just trying to keep you alive. But when your body's in that protection mode, the prefrontal cortex, so your rational part of the brain, sort of goes offline, and so you can't think rationally, logically. And the longer you're sort of out of rational, logical thinking, the longer you're sort of in states of either fight or flight or depression, shut down, numbing, where you don't feel feelings, which is when the body's just getting too overwhelmed. It just sort of shuts down in the end, and that's what this cycle can do. It can put your body in a complete state of sort of shock, panic, stress, fear, until you just completely, you feel stuck, you feel lost, you're not sure what's reality, what's not, and that's really what what the cycle is, but it's sort of the initial. And I mean, you might not have any red flags sort of before you get in the relationship, especially if you've got no knowledge of narcissistic personality disorder, or the fact that you're codependent yourself. It can sort of be when they start questioning why you're spending time with certain friends, when they start asking you to spend more time with them than you do with your family. Anything that causes sort of a red flag, a codependent tends to ignore it because they're getting their other needs met and they think it's worth it in the long run, when this is in fact what keeps them stuck in that cycle. So if I say anything, whether you realise whether you're codependent or not, if you're in a relationship with somebody that's narcissistic, even slightly, you know, I mean, there's different ends of NPD, from sort of covert, overt, right through to sociopathic and psychopathic. But if you're with any sort of narcissistic person in a friendship or a relationship, allow yourself to be extremely mindful of intuition and gut feeling, especially women. And I'm not being sexist here at all, but women have got great intuition, and it's your body telling you something for a reason. So if you can sort of stay mindful to when you're getting that sort of gut feeling, when your body's trying to say, well, hang on a minute, you know, there's something not quite right here, the more you can do that, the more you can sort of start to work on looking inside and saying, right, well, what do I actually need to do? Because for the most part, it is trauma work, and you need to work on what needs you're trying to get met by this abusive relationship. So what needs do I think are more important than ignoring my gut feeling? So it's all sort of, you know, it stems down to self-awareness and staying extremely mindful of any intuition, gut feelings in the initial stages. And even if you're deep into a relationship, if you still get gut feelings or intuition, really try to listen to them. And if you are in a relationship with somebody with a narcissistic personality disorder, or that's abusive, just any toxic environment really, do try and reach out to friends, family, somebody you trust, charities, counsellors, anything, because you don't have to stay in those relationships. You can heal from them, you can heal, and you can be separate again, and you can be okay, you know, you can be more than okay. So definitely, if you find yourself in a situation like that, please try and break free from any isolation just by sort of reaching out to just somebody you trust initially. And like I say, therapy, counselling, coaching can be extremely helpful. But try and find someone that does specialise with narcissistic personality disorder, or, you know, domestic violence, because it can be a tricky situation depending on what your partner's like. So yeah, that was just sort of an insight into red flags, codependency, narcissistic personality disorder, and I might touch on it a bit more often, just because I have got, you know, sort of personal experience with it myself, and I see a lot of it happening with people I know, or just people in my network. But yeah, I hope that shed some light. And I just want people to know that if you do think you are sort of codependent, or you've been in that situation, or you're in that situation, I want you to just, you know, be compassionate with yourself, be kind to yourself, don't blame yourself, don't kick yourself, don't beat yourself up. Just be compassionate that perhaps you didn't have that awareness before, and hopefully now there's sort of a slight bit of curiosity to sort of start asking yourself some questions, to have a bit of introspection and start seeing what's going on. If you know somebody you think might be in that situation, hopefully, you know, you can reach out and just ask how they're doing, just to sort of try and break that that isolation, and to let them know that somebody's there. But yeah, just have compassion for yourself and for others, because a lot of the time we don't know what's going on ourselves, let alone somebody on the outside trying to look in. It's very, very hard, which is why compassion is extremely important and something I bang on about all the time. So yeah, that's my bit, I think, for today. I'm almost home now, so I'm gonna go and have my switch off time, so put my phone away and go and spend some time with my daughter and my other half. So yeah, have a wonderful afternoon. If you've ever got any questions or concerns, or you ever want to talk to me about anything, my inbox is always open, and I mean that honestly, truly, deeply, genuinely is. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you guys very, very soon. Thank you.